Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Georgia Dome for tonight's second-round semifinal game between the University of Kansas Jayhawks and the University of Maryland Terrapins.
Coach, we're about to watch the magical weekend from 2002, National Championship weekend. Just curious, before we even get to most of these games here, do you ever allow yourself the luxury of making some popcorn, and throwing one of these in and checking out the game in context?
You know, it's funny. I've never really watched either game, the semifinals or the finals, completely. It's just, you know, it's one of those things where we won, obviously, and then you had to move on quickly right after the season was over, recruiting or whatever. So you just had to, you know, and so I go back and I look, but I remember, you know, the thing is, it's in your mind, these two games.
Kansas comes out red hot in this game.
Yeah.
This is a prolific Kansas team, much like yourselves. The Maryland team, a lot of future pros.
Yeah, you know, Heinrich played, what, 12 years in the league or something like that, and Collison was a great player. Those guys, they were good, and they were ranked number one in the country for a lot of the year, and we weren't. You know, Heinrich versus Blake was a heck of a matchup right there, and of course, you know, they played good defense. Roy Williams knows what he's doing. We played good defense, but yet both teams scored a lot of points. And, you know, we got down early in this, but, you know, typical Juan Dixon, you know, he was going to make sure that we were going to come back. You know, there was no doubt about it. And, you know, when you have players, you know, like a Wilcox, like a Baxter inside, we really had a good outside-inside combination with this team.
Lonnie got himself in some foul trouble in this game, picked up two quick ones. And one of the things that seemed to really be a huge storyline for this team, the play off the bench of guys like Taj Holden, Ryan Randall. There wasn't much drop off, as great as Lonnie was.
I know, it was amazing. You know, you talk about a luxury for a coach. You know, Lonnie gets in foul trouble. Normally, that'd be a crisis right away that early in the first half. But, you know, you put in Taj Holden, you put in Ryan Randall. And like you said, there's not much of a drop-off. Plus, those guys were players. In other words, this stage was not too big for those guys, which a lot of the times your so-called backup players, they're good during the regular season, whatever. But you get to this level, all of a sudden, it's not the same.
Well, if Juan was the best player on the court, this guy, Chris Wilcox, the second best player on the court.
Yeah,
Talk about the amount of money he made for himself this weekend.
Well, the 3 weeks, really. He was the best inside player in the country in terms of his physical ability, his timing, his ability to run the court, all those things which I guess the NBA guys look at. And he could do all that. And then what that did, the way we ran transition there, they would sprint. Baxter, you know, Chris Wilcox, Taj, they'd sprint for the rim. And then when you had Juan with the ball, you had to cover, you know, the rim. And so all of a sudden, Juan's open for that jumper right on the 3-foot line in transition. And that really was a big part of our transition offense.
You took the first lead at 26-25. Juan had 13 of the first 26 points. And he was the guy, as you said. I mean, you're down 13-2.
Yeah. And
he makes a steal, a layup, and he's burying a three-pointer off of a flex.
Yeah, I'll never forget the timeout down 13-2. I was going to kill everybody. And Juan got in the huddle, and he killed everybody for me. But he could do that because he went out, and I think he hit back-to-back threes or something to get us right back in the game. And there's another luxury. Our big guys could shoot the ball pretty well. Like Taj Holden was a great shooter from the three-point line. And, you know, that always helps. And, you know, when you have no one on the court where they can completely lay off of, that really helps your offense.
It was an interesting stretch in the first half when you really got it going. It's always interesting to see a team that's primarily a man-to-man team like Kansas be chased into a 2-3 zone.
Yeah.
They didn't have a lot of good
I kind of like that.
Yeah.
You know, as a coach, you know, because you know it's not their best defense, but yet they felt they couldn't cover us. And, you know, just things like that. We knew how to get the ball to the right guys. In other words, when Juan was open, he got the ball. And nobody questioned that on the team, which is part of the reason we were a great basketball team that year. And Juan was willing to also give it up, believe it or not. You know, I always kid Juan about his assist total, given all the great totals he has. But he knew how to get the ball to the right guys. And, you know, I always felt like from the 10-minute mark in the first half to about the 10-minute mark in the second half, those 20 minutes were as good a basketball as we played all year. It was nice to do it in that stage.
Well, a 7-point game at halftime, and you had to feel like you had stemmed the tide. I mean, after that start, the lead gets out to as much as 20 in the second half, and Coach, as you said, kind of a clinic in the first 15 minutes of that second half.
Yeah, we just were able to get the ball, into the paint. We made shots when they were open, and we played good enough defense. I didn't think this was a great defensive game for us, but we played good enough defense. And, you're playing against a team that likes to play like we did. We both like to get up and down the court. So even though the score got really high for college basketball, that's going to happen when you have two offensive teams that want to run. And see, to me, I think you can play really good defense in a 90 to an 80 game as a 60 to 50 game. It's just there's more possessions, so there's going to be more points scored.
Well, the fact that there were so many possessions in this game means really it mitigates the meaning of a 13-2 start. It seems like you've got hundreds of possessions.
Yeah, and that was the thing. You knew you still had 37 minutes to play basketball, and I knew we were good enough to play with Kansas. I wasn't sure we could beat them, but I knew we could play with them. But when you have Blake running the offense, the ball is going to get moving, and the ball is going to go to the right guy. Blake knew during the game who was hitting their shots, who was cold, that type of thing. That all went into his calculation, and when you couple that with being able to do that within the offense. See, a lot of teams, they can make great plays, but they're not really out of the offense. Most of the good things we did were out of the offense, and that's a veteran team. I mean, we had a lot of veteran players there, and that's what happens. And the other thing we had, and that's a good example right there, we had guys that had great hands playing inside for us. Lonnie Baxter, Chris Wilcox, Ryan Randall, Taj Holden. If you passed them the ball close to the basket, there's usually a lot of traffic there, they would catch the ball. And I think a lot of people underrate how important that is, where the big guy doesn't fumble a little bit, not lose it, but just have that moment where he fumbles it, and that gives the defense a chance to react. And once we were open inside and we caught the ball, we were gone. We scored.
Yeah, Heinrich ends up fouling out of this game. Collison had foul issues for a lot of this game as well, and a lot of that speaks to the pressure that Blake put on Heinrich and Chris and Lonnie put on Collison underneath.
Yeah, I think Collison was shocked at how physical and how quick. Yeah, you look at Lonnie, you look at Ryan Randall, you look at Taj Holden. They all knew Wilcox was really quick, but they didn't know how quick those other three guys were. Now that's a big advantage inside when you play against a guy that might not be used to playing against that type of quickness. Now here they are. They're making a run at us. There's no doubt about it. They made some shots during this time. Just really good shots. I thought we were playing good defense. And here we are. It's a 5-point game with 2 minutes left in the game.
Well, that's with Heinrich on the bench too. So they had some guys step up when they needed them.
That's one of those things. Well, you turn around and yell at Jimmy Patsos about the scouting report in that situation.
When in doubt, blame Jimmy. But it's always one that makes the shot. It's a 5-point game, and that is as directional a shot as you're going to hit. They won't go away. It's Kansas. They got a lot of pride in the program.
Yeah, I mean they're used to winning. Big games. We have to really keep our composure here, which was very important because they had the momentum. There's no doubt about it.
When you talk about composure, that's Collison calling a timeout that Kansas did not have at that juncture, and so. You get a guy like Juan. I think Juan ended up at over 90% for the season. 8 for 11 in this game, but I mean, normally he's going to cash.
It was great. It was, when you play against Roy Williams, they're going to do two things. They're going to run a lot of the Carolina stuff, even though it was at Kansas, and they're going to play with it. They're not going to try like that year. A lot of teams tried to slow us down a little bit. That wasn't in Kansas game plan. Roy doesn't. That's not in his book. He's not going to slow it down. So I knew we had to score, and I was hoping we could play good enough defense to win the game, and we did. It wasn't a great defensive game, especially in the second half. We lost something defensively in the second half. I went to zone, and that might have been, when you do that, which Kansas did earlier. When you do that, though, I think it puts a little doubt, looking back, it puts a little doubt in the players' minds, like, are we good enough to stop them man to man? And you don't want to go there.
Yeah.
You want to avoid that at all costs. But I just thought, we were really struggling in the second half there toward the end to cover, and we went zone, and they made a couple threes that got them right back in the game.
Indiana is sort of the the exact opposite of what you were just talking about with Roy Williams in Kansas, where you know that they're not going to want to play a game,
Right.
Above 70 points, maybe even above 60.
Yeah, and I didn't know their coach, Mike Davis, really well in terms of how he played the game. You got the tapes from this year, but really he didn't have that pedigree that a Roy Williams or a Kelvin Sampson, would have. And so it was a little shaky. And we were nervous. I mean, you go into the championship game, you're nervous because we hadn't been there before. We got to the Final Four the year before, lost. But here we are. We're in the championship game. We get a chance to do something that, is going to be a forever thing. And we were tight at the start of the game. And plus, I thought we had all the pressure because we were heavily favored to win that game.
It's a 1 against a 5.
Yeah.
And Indiana had a magical run, sort of held together by Scotch tape and chewing gum, and they deserve a lot of credit for getting to this game. But you mentioned the nerves, Coach. It manifested itself. A lot of turnovers early on in this game. It wasn't pretty. And you think about how up and down that Kansas game had been. Indiana makes this one the exact opposite.
I just thought we played well enough to win this game. There was nothing spectacular. Although we could go both ways. We could be a good offensive team and a good defensive team. They had 49 points and we let them have a 3 at the end of the game. So you hold a team in the championship game to 49, in 2002, that's pretty good. And
if we get a chance to run that clip back right there, this is Juan. Juan did the exact same thing against Kansas, where everybody plays him for that flex cut. And he does a step back move into the corner. You get a skip pass to the opposite corner, and he is just cash. And so he runs the regular flex cut probably 19 times out of 20. Sure. So when he steps back, he is wide open.
And then we had the guys good enough where they could recognize that too, where they could get him the ball because he wasn't open long there, but he got his man to go for the fake on the cut. And all of a sudden, he's wide open. But you got to get the ball to him in time. If you give Juan a little daylight, he's going to make it. And in his mind, he knows he's going to make it. I never coached a player with more confidence than Juan Dixon.
Here's a subtle play for you, Coach. Taj Holden off your bench.
Yeah.
Okay, he's got Jeffries, who is there, Indiana's best player by a mile. So Taj does a good job boxing him out. The rebound's coming on this side. This ends up being Jeffries' second foul of the half that Taj picks up on him.
Yeah.
Subtle Taj Holden special.
Taj had a way of making contact with other players. Let's just leave it that way. He was really good at all the finesse stuff. For a guy as big as he was, I think in Taj's mind, he was always a guard. Yeah, I really believe it. That's how he played. Now there's Juan. See, that's what he was really good at. He just had that anticipation ability that was incredible. You teach that. You teach about the line of the ball. As they get sloppy, that ball gets closer to the line where you can make that steal. And, Juan, just felt that every pass was his. He'd drive me nuts sometimes because he'd run around all over the place. I'd say, Juan, your man's over here. Why don't you spend some time with him? Because he was always looking for the steal, but that's part of his game. You don't want to take that away from him.
He never really stole the ball much off the dribble, but he played lanes as well as anybody who ever.
Yeah, he was a great pressing player too because of that. He could read a trap, see where the guy in the trap was going to throw that next pass. And he did all those things.
In spite of the turnovers early on, the team is taking control. At this point in time, I believe that was Sleepy.
Yeah, that's a great move. He went with his right hand, but we played 5 minutes in that game. We knew, I don't know what the score is, but we knew we were better than Indiana. So you sometimes that's not good because you think you can. We'll go down and score. They just score, but that's okay. We'll go down and score. That type of thing.
Indiana comes out and they're going to make some shots. That's Dane Fife, who's now on that Indiana bench. Yeah. With Coach Woodson, but they came out. It's a program with a lot of pride. Like everybody, you're in a national championship game. What do you have to lose?
They had the thing going for them where they had won national championships, and they knew it was possible because people at their school had done that. And here's one of the things we did all year. Great job. Once we could get the ball to Lonnie, when Lonnie had that angle, you weren't going to stop him. And, you know, that's a big guy on him, not as thick as Lonnie, but a good player.
Lonnie and that sizable rear end of his. I mean,
you see right there, they stayed out on Blake. They were a little worried about Blake shooting it, so that opened up that passing lane. And we got the angle to be able to make this pass. You got to dribble the ball over and see that's where Juan was very underrated as a passer. When he wanted to, he was a good passer. He could figure out how to get the ball to go.
This is their first lead of the game, seal inside by Jeffries. And that's interesting here what happens here. They press up on Blake, and he gets past two guys, and look what happens. He finds a wide open Juan, and that's the biggest shot of the game right there. So you go from 2 down to 1 up.
I always wondered about that situation where if they just got excited and decided to trap on their own, did the coach call that? Or?
The irony is they're not a pressing
That's
team.
what I mean. What are they doing?
They didn't press at all. And now all of a sudden...
see, they spent the whole game trying not to give open shots to Juan on the perimeter. And by trapping there, created this. This was a shot.
Yeah, a little step back.
And I remember Juan in the summertime going to the gym and just hours working on that shot right there. And it's amazing how those things come back, you know, to either haunt you or make you what you are, you know, which was a great player.
Well, the lead gets up to 7 here in the next clip, and I remember it wasn't like that the air went out of the balloon for Indiana. They just looked so fatigued down the last 4 or 5 minutes of this game. So, you guys going into that Kansas game had shot almost 86% from the free throw line in the NCAA tournament.
You know, I mean, that's a little high, but at the same time, we were a good free throw shooting team. I think we went into the NCAA tournament, and back then they didn't have all the stuff on the internet or whatever. I think we had the most assists of any team in the country going into the NCAA tournament. And there's the crazies that whole field out.
That is a great shot, and probably, that kind of brings a tear to your eye, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and they're probably, right now, they'd be on their way to Venice.
Exactly, and then you get the sort of the seminal Maryland basketball moment, Juan throwing the ball to the rafters.
And Wilcox messed up by hair. I'll never forgive him for that.
Coach, you, at this point in time, you had been coaching for a long time, and you had your daughter there, you had your grandson there. There was so many reasons to celebrate this moment. I mean, you have any idea what was running through your head?
It was different because with about a minute left, we probably had a 1. And so you had a chance to gather your thoughts a little bit, which was a good thing. For these guys,
there you go.
That was the big thing for these guys, was to get another shot, because it doesn't usually happen. You get to the Final Four, great, but you're not getting back there the next year, because the reason you got there, you lost a lot of good players from that team or whatever. I wasn't sure, you know, but by the time we got into the season, I knew we were good. I knew there was other good teams out there, so I wasn't thinking we had a lock or anything, but to go back again was very fulfilling. I thought about that. I thought about all the good teams in the history of the University of Maryland that probably were good enough to play in the Final Four, that didn't get a chance to win a national championship. You know, all those things go through your head.
So I've been in your house before, and I know you just relocated, you just moved. What is the one thing that you have from this weekend as a memento that means the most to you?
Wow. I mean, that obviously the plaque, the NCAA, I think that cost $7.95. But anyway, because all plaques are the same for all sports.
Exactly right.
So, but anyway, the one that I have a jersey, and it's huge. It's like a XXX, and every player signed it, every coach.
Nice.
And I had that. I didn't have that out in the museum. I had that separate. So that'll go somewhere in the new house.
Do you remember anything about, I mean, everybody associates this moment with one shining moment.
Right.
Do you have any recollection of that part of it at all, the music playing and it being shown on the screen in Atlanta?
Yeah, I was looking around at this, just trying to soak everything in. And, that was, something that, you never forget.
Coach, you see so many plays here in these 15 or 20 minutes of clips. I'm sort of reminded of the difference between, big time players and big game players.
Yeah.
And you think about the guys who contributed not just in this Final Four, but in the previous year to get you to where you were in back-to-back Final Fours. You had a bunch of big game players.
Yeah, we didn't back down to anybody, and I think that's the key. You don't win all those games, but you just let the other teams know that you're not going to go away. And I think that's a chemistry thing with your team, because if you have one weak link, a guy that's not tough enough to handle these situations or any situation where there's pressure, then that kind of spreads throughout the team. And so you need that eighth guy, that ninth guy, a Calvin McCall has to be a tough guy, and he was a tough guy. He was tough in practice. Some of our best games in 2002 were in practice when we went first team versus second team.
Yeah.
I mean, it got a little ugly out there. But that's the other thing they did. They made each other better during the year. In other words, a lot of teams start at a point, and that's as good as they are during the year because they don't practice well. They don't do it. We had great practice with the team. You get a guy like Juan Dixon out there in practice, or Byron Mouton. They want to win a layup drill. They don't want to finish second in the layup drill. I mean, that's how those guys were, and that just spreads throughout the team. And we had great leadership, without a doubt. You get a point guard like Steve Blake, he's going to make the right play. He's going to sacrifice his scoring. And the thing that I always never forget about Blake is he averaged, I think, 9.9 points a game this year, 2002, and he played 13 years in the NBA. So for all the guys out there that think they got to get 20 every game, that's not true. You play the game. People know whether you can play the game or not, and Blake could play the game.
Well, that leadership that you're talking about extends to the head coach, and I think this is a really good picture for us to close on, Coach. Everybody wearing the championship hat, everybody's got a hand on the trophy, and it's over with. It's a great moment.
Yeah, it's the next day back at Cole Fieldhouse, Juan had the 30. I forget who it was that used to give that crystal trophy, and Juan pretended to drop it like up on stage. And he gave it that. He gave it this slip, like he dropped it. It was just incredible. But like for all those guys, it's. I don't think you realize it. I know I didn't. You don't realize it then, but you can. When these guys come back, and we have our reunion, it's like they never left. And that's what this does. It just gives you that feeling.
Yeah, and I think on behalf of all of the Maryland basketball family and fans and Coach, this is as good as it gets right here. And we all owe you a great debt of gratitude, and I hope you enjoy the anniversary coming up.
Yeah, it'll be great. Those guys, I'm really happy. I think they're all coming back, and it should be a great time. And as you get away from playing, you become a much better player.
Yeah, that's right.
Than all these guys. Taj Holden had the great line 5 years ago when we had all the guys together, and he said, he got up there and he said, "Some of you guys look like you could still play, and some of you guys look like you never played." And I just thought, I've used that in a lot of banquets, and stuff like that. That's a cool line.
Very good, very good. Well, the next time we get together, I'll bring the popcorn and we'll watch a clear copy of this.
Yeah, I really don't think I ever watched this whole game. I've watched parts of it, but not the whole game.